Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to all of you to our Lunch and Learn webinars here at Action Coaching Birmingham. It's great to be back with you, and I hope you had an absolutely brilliant weekend, spending time with your family, perhaps a bit of Sunday afternoon time preparing for the week ahead, but most of all, chilling out and using that time with your family and your friends. It's great to have you back with us this lunchtime, and it's also brilliant to welcome back one of our regular guests, Adam Wootton from Impact Sales Coaching. Hi, Adam, how are you?
Hello, Stephen. Good morning, stroke afternoon. Happy lunchtime. I'm all right, thank you. Thanks for having me back on. You well?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well, yes. And I hope you had a good weekend. And we look forward to hearing what you've got to share with us this lunchtime, Adam. Yeah, we've just clocked over the 12 o'clock, haven't we? So it has just gone into the afternoon. And for those of us who have who've been, or those of you who've been listening to perhaps some of the Downing Street briefings, hopefully you'll get some lighter relief by coming over to Action Coach this lunchtime. We've probably got more useful stuff to share with you, and hopefully I'm sure you will benefit from being with us for the next hour while you munch away on your lunch, whether it's a healthy snack that's on the screen or something perhaps a bit more self-indulgent, I'm sure. But it's great to have you with us. If this is your first time of joining Action Coach for these Lunch and Learn webinars, please do use the question and answer box in Zoom. If you're with us in Zoom, so we've got a couple of people already, and numbers will always increase as we go along. Once Adam starts talking, you always go shoot up anyway. But if you have questions, please do put them in the Q&A box. And if you're listening to us on Facebook, which I know we always have listeners on Facebook, please do put any questions, any comments, any queries in the comment box. If it's your first time with us here at Lunch and Learn and Action Coach, please give us a like, please comment, please share, please tell us your key learnings from this webinar. If it's your second time, perhaps you can spare us a love heart and also share and let your friends and colleagues know how they can benefit from the Lunch and Learn webinars too. But just to formally introduce you, Adam, it's great to have you with us from Impact Sales Coaching. Adam, do you just want to tell us a bit about what you do over at Impact?
Absolutely. Work with either sales teams or business owners in the SME market, helping them to unlock the true potential of their business through sales. You can have a great business, but actually we need to sell it and get you in front of people. So I help my guys with their sales strategy. How to get in front of those clients, what's their value propositioning, how can they negotiate, pitch and present that we're discussing today, how to overcome objections and ultimately retain and grow existing customers.
What a perfect pitch, Adam, and we'll be critiquing that, I'm sure, in a few minutes' time. But I was just thinking as you were giving that little pitch, then you're going to be talking all about it, so it's going to be top notch, and absolutely was. Not to critique our own, but here at Action Coach in Birmingham, we are here to help business owners in all industries grow your business, to get more from your team, to get more time, and ultimately to work on your business and not get tied up too much working in your business. Whether that's about thinking about your destination, your vision, the basics of accounting, delivering your business in the most streamlined way you can to free up costs and time. We'd love to talk to you. Adam would love to talk to you about your sales process, and together we can help you grow your business and not just help it survive, but help it thrive into the future. There's my 60 seconds, Adam. You can critique that all you like, but because today is all about, isn't it, the perfect pitch and making sure that we use every opportunity we have, you know, whether it's somebody we're bumping into or whether it's somebody we're deliberately making that phone call to sell and to promote our business. You know, it's about how do we go about doing that in the most effective way. And dare I say, Adam, I know you love to talk. We've got part 1 and we've got part 2 coming up in a few weeks' time, haven't we? So we're going to cover part of it today, and we're going to come back and finish off. And hopefully in that time, we'll also have some questions and queries coming on Facebook that we can also respond to as well. But Adam, I can see you're just about to share your screen. I know you've got some slides that you want to cover.
I do, yeah. So just click on that as usual, the old technology. It'll catch up with us when it's good and ready. So hopefully you can see a slide that says, what is pitching and presenting, Steve? And so sometimes when we work with new clients or sales teams that are pitching or presenting their solution or their businesses to their customers or prospects, understandably, sometimes we all get a little bit nervous about that. And, you know, maybe that's through the fear of failure, not entirely sure what we're going to be asked, those sorts of things. And so actually, when we think about what is pitching and presenting, it's healthy and good to probably invert that view and think of it as something a bit more than just a presentation. And so if anything, when we think about our presentations to people, the first step really is to recognize it's a fantastic opportunity. We've got ourselves in front of somebody who is remotely interested in what we've got to say. You've got something that can really add value to them. And we know, perhaps you don't know, but it's a common phrase, right? That people buy from people they know, they like, and they trust. Well, that's lovely and it's important. But let's not kid ourselves that people also do need to buy a good product or a service that's going to deliver some kind of a benefit to them. So how are you going to save them money? What pains are you going to take away? What efficiency are you offering? How are you making their life easier so they can help their customers? And so with the presentation, this is a great way to get those points across. And so it's a fantastic opportunity. I've already mentioned about matching features and benefits of your product. It's also a superb opportunity for us to start building rapport, because we can so often send an email with a proposal to one of our prospects, and it's a bit of fingers crossed. Hopefully that does the job. Well, actually, I would argue that what's going to be great is, of course, Mr. and Mrs. Customer Prospect, we can send you a proposal, but actually we'd sooner discuss that with you over a Zoom call, a coffee, a face-to-face that's socially distant, or whatever it is. But either way, this is a fantastic opportunity to build rapport. Also,
I guess it's often, we often call it the elevator pitch, don't we, Adam? And I guess we want to be able to pitch our business in the way that the other person doesn't want to get off the elevator. They want to stay there and continue the conversation. I think some people often see the pitch as sort of calling them in the corner of the elevator so they can't get out until they said yes. But it's actually about engaging with them so they want to have that conversation and find out more.
I think that's 100% right. You know, we want them to start asking questions, and maybe as part of the second session, we can talk about consultative-based selling in terms of what kind of questions that we can ask to stimulate that discussion. But that opportunity to build rapport is absolutely priceless. Moreover, it's also a golden opportunity to learn more. I'd argue probably more important, to learn more about the person that we're talking to. Asking those questions, understand what the real pain points are, getting to those objections, unearthing objections, inviting them. It's a great opportunity to learn more. Also, of course, you don't necessarily need to go over the top on this, but it's a good opportunity for us to demonstrate this is our area of expertise. This is why you need Action Coach. This is why you need impact sales coaching in your life, because of the experience that we offer. Equally, as part of that, we can provide a portfolio of evidence to say, well, as part of this presentation, we've worked with people similar to you before in this sector, in this service. And so providing evidence and case studies of that within your presentation, time allowing, is only going to sort of set you up to sort of do well. But ultimately, those are lovely things. It's your approach is going to be absolutely critical. And within our time together this afternoon, I'd like us to look at preparation. There's going to be some key tips for you to take away, things to be looking at from a presentation journey, as in the person that you're actually talking to. But like in business, the fact all of us are on this call now, in the middle of a pandemic and a recession, regardless of whatever your mindset is, the fact that we're still alive in business and going and investing time to learn right now this afternoon shows that people are prepared to put that investment in. I'm sure you've seen that a lot with your guys as well, Steve.
Absolutely. And I'll just add to that, those who are, have the right mindset, it is about the right mindset right now to drive their business forward. They've got the passion about their business to drive it forward, are those ones that will not just survive, but as I said earlier on, will thrive and will do the very best. It is about thinking, how can you maximize every single opportunity right now? And as you said, knowing your stuff. But you may well go on to it, Adam, but I often think the first bit about pitching is those first few words that hook somebody in. I'm sure there's stats behind it as to how attentive we are when we're listening to somebody. It's the same as these webinars. We need to make sure we very clearly articulate what we're going to talk about at the very beginning, because otherwise people will switch off or flick up their screens or whatever. And it's the same with a pitch, isn't it? It's got to have those hooks right at the beginning. But going back to your point, absolutely, those who've got the enthusiasm and the drive to get their business and the passion and the knowledge and demonstrate that are the ones that will absolutely win business, even in these difficult times.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, absolutely right, Steve. And that's why the investment up front in your presentation is going to be absolutely vital. The adage of, I'll wing it, I'll blag it, those sorts of things. I've got a presentation I delivered 6 months ago. I'll just sort of rehash that and throw that up there. Sometimes we can fall over, and even more scary, I guess, is sometimes our prospects and customers will pick up on that as well. So if someone's prepared to make time for you, it's important that we invest that time back and go all in to make that as a meaningful interaction as possible. And the other point on there, please, Steve, yeah.
No, just to add to that, if things have been challenging for any of our listeners or anybody we're working with, it's important to take the time out and be honest with yourself as to why the challenges have been there, to reflect and think, what could I be doing differently, to go back to your pitch, to go back to your presentation you've got from 6 months ago and think, what is it that I'm doing wrong, or what could I do even better? How could I take things up a notch, and go back to, either the same client or the same prospect or the new prospect next time and think, what can I do differently?
You're right, one of the biggest, or one of the many areas I talk about, but key areas that I share with my teams is I'm really invested into marginal gains. You're already, by definition of us here, we're going to be good at what we do. Obviously, we wouldn't have a business, but anybody can be good. I'm interested in those marginal tweaks, those marginal gains in your sales strategy, the questions, the negotiating, the presenting, that's going to get us from the good to great. But then I want you to go one layer further and become unstoppable. That's where we start owning our space and owning our territory. And whether that's, I don't know if that's just a kind of sales thing in terms of its numbers, its deadlines, this is my sales territory, my sector, those sorts of things. But I would argue that there's probably no harm in taking inspiration from some of those things, just to always keep raising our game upwards and upwards. We can all sit back and rest. But then
I was in a meeting this morning, Adam, and it just what you just said just reminded me of a comment somebody else made. They said, "Oh, I know." I used the name Claire. I know Claire's pitch off by heart. I could do it for her. And I think, if you're getting to that stage, if other people are giving you that sort of feedback, use that as a wake-up call. Actually, it's time to think about your pitch, to think about how you can do things differently, how you can wake your audience up, particularly if you're in an environment where you're giving the same presentation, perhaps to the same group of networks on a regular basis. Don't become, sort of, I don't know, the gravy. Make sure you're the Marmite. Make sure you're there. People look up, they sit up, they listen, because you've got something interesting, something different to say, not the same old every single week.
Absolutely. And it's on the presenter to make that difference, to mix things up. Because as you say, you just become background noise if you're not careful, in which case there could be all sorts of missed opportunities to add value to people and everything else. So you're completely right. And it's on all of us to mix those up a little bit, which then links on to, so what if you make a mistake? We can be so focused on being unstoppable and exceptional all the time that sometimes we get ourselves a bit wrapped up in, what if I make a mistake? But the only way you were going to get to being unstoppable is by making those little mistakes. It's okay, it's cool, it's human, it's healthy. I'm not here today to talk about the successes I've had. I'm here because that's not interesting, or in fact, it should be quite boring to some people. What I am here to do is maybe share some of the things that I did wrong. Because believe me, I've got a whole portfolio of stuff I've done wrong, which makes me credible and relevant to sit here. Because while there's a boatload of stuff that's gone right, I have also made mistakes. Brilliant. And I can't wait for the next one in a really sadistic way, because I can learn from that failure and approach to it. That's how we're going to grow. And so
again, Adam, you remind me of what I say to my children on a regular basis when they're doing their schoolwork. It's okay to make mistakes. Don't rub them out. Make sure they're glaringly obvious in your book, because then you won't make the same mistake again. You'll learn from that. And it's the same, with myself in coaching. I reflect back on some of the challenges, some of the errors I've made in my career. Like you, there's been lots of success, but there has been challenges and things I look back on in both my work and my personal life that I think absolutely use it as a learning point to reflect and to share with others so that they don't go down that same road. I have got a question from Simon. I don't know if you may be covering this anyway, but very quick question. How long should the perfect pitch be? You may well be covering that ad in a few minutes time, but thank you, Simon, for the question so far.
Absolutely. Simon, I've got you covered. No problem. I can help you out with that fairly shortly. Stay tuned. Great question.
Perfect.
Keep them rocking and rolling. This is what we're about. This is where the value sits. I'm not here just to prescribe. Absolutely. Interaction's cool as well. So yeah, thank you for that, Simon. Anybody else that is thinking about a question, just send it. No harm. Brilliant. Yeah. So I've got you covered on that. So it's cool to make mistakes. And the other point on there is when we're presenting, we can almost get a bit too personal or a bit too showy in terms of, look at us, this is what we can do, we've done this, we've done that, to the point where we almost alienate the customer, where it ends up just being a little bit awkward. So all the time when we're pitching, we start thinking about putting the customer first. And so we've covered a little bit, I'm respectful of time, so we've covered a little bit in terms of what pitching and presenting is. If you take nothing else from this slide, just take the top point. It's a fantastic opportunity. And you probably know it deep down. But if you do get those roller coaster of emotions, of nervousness, excitement, apprehension, whatever it is, all healthy, by the way, it's still recognizing the logic of this is a great opportunity. And if, I know it's mental gymnastics, and I'm not here to talk about life coaching, that's a serious profession, and that's not the profession I'm in. However, that said, if you do find yourself feeling quite nervous and a bit apprehensive and anxious, just understand that's a natural body's way of responding and recognizing. And if you're saying things such as, I'm really nervous about this, flip it around and start thinking, actually, I'm really excited about this. This is my brain, my body, and my mind getting ready, good to go. Easier said than done, I accept, depending on levels of experience. But if nothing else, it's a fantastic opportunity.
I would completely agree. I think a little bit of anxiety, Adam, always helps us to make sure we're on our edge and doing our very best. Absolutely agree.
Cool. So, housekeeping. This is the point where it can come across as patronizing. And that's fine. I'm not here to patronize, though. I'm here to cover all bases, to establish best practice, and to add as much value as I can. And so when we think about housekeeping, again, another saying that we throw around from a variety of different books reference it, but control the controllables. If it's on you to control what you can control. It isn't your customer or prospect's fault if you've had a rubbish night's sleep. They may politely ask, oh, how are you? It's just a how are you? Get to the point. And I'm being purposely objective and hard and maybe a bit cold in some of these things. But we work with the teams. It's about massive accountability, ownership, and high standards. So just get the housekeeping right. Equipment check, laptop power packs, USBs, all of that kind of stuff. Let's make sure that we've got that together. And the next point, which can be quite sort of divisive, which is always interesting, is doorbells, stuff that's going on in the background, family members running in, pets running across keyboards. Sometimes this goes down like an absolute.
I've seen it all.
And that's the point. We've seen it. Yeah, we're all human. Things happen, and it's quite, adorable when a puppy runs in or a cat runs across the laptop. But I guess, why? Control what you can control, and those things may come across as maybe a little bit unprofessional, depending on who you're talking to. Again, it can be quite a divisive point, because actually we are all human and we live in, we're working from home, some of us. These things are natural and it shows a human element. But control what you can control. Some people are a little bit bored of seeing cats on their Zoom calls. Just playing devil's advocate on that. Also, consider the format and the medium that you're using. So we could talk about PowerPoint. I'm using a PowerPoint today because this is a webinar, a bit different to training. This is a webinar. And that's so this is acceptable. But sometimes it could just be setting up a call and it's called a presentation, but actually you're screen sharing and you're sharing a PDF document of your proposal. Doesn't necessarily always have to be in the format of a PowerPoint. It tends to be sometimes overly leaned on as a tool. Perhaps if it's a face-to-face presentation, well, again, you don't always have to rely on a projector and Zoom or connecting to a TV. Take the proposal with you, or, I haven't got them to hand here, but you can have big presentation boards where you put your proposal on, you sort of glue them to the back, and you can.
You can't see it.
Oh, the background.
But my background's not saying, but you have things in front of you that you can show to your client. Absolutely.
Mix things up. There's a variety of different methods and different tools. Absolutely. So it's cool to mix stuff up.
I'd also just add to that, Adam, if you're somebody like me who's perhaps sitting at home and is easily distracted, you've got a really important call, meeting, whatever, close the blinds on the window, close your door so you're not looking at the postman coming to the front door, you're not looking at the lady walking a dog going past the front of the house. There's nothing worse than me doing this all the time to see what's going past the window. Just try and keep focus on the screen and the person that you want to have your attention. You've got to give them yours as well.
Completely. Yeah. So I mean, I was on the lunch and learn that you did, and Tozu was delivering that. There was a really insightful, useful lunch and learn activity to listen to and observe in terms of videography, things that you can use for Zoom in terms of lapel mics and cameras and lighting in particular.
Yeah.
And in terms of that housekeeping, Steve, I guess it links into that. If you've got a window with huge amounts of daylight pouring in behind you, people may struggle to see you. So you're right. Other considerations. I never really know the answer to this next point, but it's how do you dress for those appointments and those meetings? It's
an ongoing conversation between you and I, Adam. An ongoing conversation.
I mean, look at it. It's totally subjective.
I am branded. Just on that point, there were days when I most of last week I have been in a shirt and a jumper, professional clothing, and I wouldn't say this is unprofessional, but I guess it depends on the client in front of you and what you're doing. Today I've chosen Action Coach branded clothing. I'm doing a webinar, but it's whatever makes you feel comfortable and you feel is appropriate for the client in front of you. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and so in my case, the shirt and tie, I wear this because it makes me feel comfortable. A tie is a bit like my sort of comfort blanket. It's like, okay, I'm in business mode. But of course, then we could say, well, you should dress to your client. And I suppose if I'm saying anything at all, it's just be a little bit empathetic to that. Just check your own housekeeping, your own admin on those sorts of things. And so one of my former clients was a global client, a big key account. They were always cutting around in chinos and sort of polo tops. It's like really cool and trendy. If I'm honest, I don't necessarily fit into that kind of bracket. I just do me. But because that person was spending X amount with me, I wore a shirt and tie out of respect, even though their culture was quite chilled and relaxed. They were comfortable with it, but also I did it out of a sign of respect. And there is, I guess, no right nor wrong answer as to what you should wear. Yes, be comfortable, but it's just, again, a personal admin thing in terms of just be a little bit mindful. Rocking up with scruffy old Converse, is that going to set the right image? No idea. And the other point on there, one of the mistakes I made, say early on in my career, we were pitching to a global insurance company, and I was so nervous the night before, years ago, and I couldn't eat. I was driving to London, and it was about 4 or 5 in the morning, ready to get ready for this presentation. Skipped breakfast. I just wasn't hungry, and we got through the elevator doors, went into the boardroom, and it was just the heat and the fact I didn't eat or drink particularly too much. I really struggled with my performance and went a bit lightheaded. So with the emotions and stuff like that, I know it seems a bit stupid, the obvious, to tell people to eat, but it is the harsh reality that some people get so uptight that we often set ourselves to fail by not taking care of the obvious, easily overlooked housekeeping thing. So eat something that's going to be good for you. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, great comment from Sarah. Not a question, but a comment. She says, make sure you have the right background. And I can just add to that, Sarah. Now, I've spoken to many clients and prospects over the last 6 months. It's 6 months now since we've been in this situation, March to October. But I've seen people in their lounge, their living room, their bedrooms, lying on the bed, sitting on the bed, and I think if you are pitching, you don't want to be pitching lying on your bed, sitting on your bed. If you've got a bit of a disorganized house, nothing wrong with that. But if that's who you are, put a background on your screen. Sarah's just put another comment, phone or Zoom, which is better, Adam. You may be covering that as well. But if you are on Zoom, make sure, or any other platform, make sure you've got the right background behind you, or a professional looking background at that.
Absolutely right. And, in addition to that, be mindful of that, where you're either talking to somebody's forehead or you're talking all the way up here. Obvious stuff, right? But just you'll be surprised the amount of people I see that, or I see right up their nose, which is not cool. I don't want to see that. So other things to be looking out for there. Sarah, just to address your point on phone or Zoom, solid question, and I will cover it now, is let the customer or prospect decide. The best thing we can be doing is adapting and tailoring all of our approaches, our messaging, everything to the customer or the prospect. The very fact that you say to them that And I've done this, I do this almost every day with my guys. It's like, I'm respectful of safe social distancing and the safe systems of work around COVID. I can accommodate virtual, either Zoom or Teams, or face-to-face, or a phone. Which would you prefer? That would be my recommendation.
Yeah. Give the prospect the choice. Absolutely right.
Completely, because actually, if you were to set Zoom, there are people, and I do know people, who are really uncomfortable with Zoom, particularly if their camera's on, and I'm totally empathetic and get that. So let the person you're talking to drive that conversation. Another aspect to perhaps keep in mind and consider is there's a University of California. I couldn't find one for the UK. Normally I prefer Californian stats just because it's our domestic market. That's the only reason. Don't go weird, everybody. That's the reason. But 65% of visual learners across the campus of learners were visual learners. And so depending on the method that you choose, mix stuff up a bit. So I could have 3 or 4 bullet points on it and that was it. That might help a visual learner, but just break things up a little bit. Consider what you're using and how you're kind of piecing it out, really. So cool.
Yeah,
That, Steve?
Just on that point, we've all heard of the phrase death by PowerPoint. So absolutely, Adam, agree. Mix it up. Don't rely on the PowerPoint. Make sure you've got your own information to add to it. You don't just be reading off the screen. And I guess the other point, just coming back to what Sarah said, Adam, phone or Zoom, every single point on your housekeeping up there would apply irrespective. So don't think because you're on the phone, just prepare yourself in exactly the same way, I would say.
Yeah, precisely that. You got one shot with those right impressions. Let's make them pop and stand out. Cool. Okay. Yeah. We shall move on. So that was the housekeeping. And you'll note on the first slide, we spoke about it's an investment in preparation. We haven't even said anything particularly yet. We've just focused on what we can control, as in our own environments around us. Now we start looking at the types of preparation, the things that we could be doing ahead of our presentation. For some, it's tedious, depending on whether I know we've spoken about personality profiling before. A driver type of person or an assertive type of person might just put the presentation together and off we go. But the more time you invest in going through this stuff, the absolute better. And something that Steve mentioned at the start there, which is totally right, start fresh. Tailor your pitches. And I'll put WIFM in brackets there. It's a bit of term for quite a while. Is that something you've heard of, Steve?
It is. It's every radio station, everyone's favorite radio station. What's in it for me? We all tune into it. We're all acutely aware of it. Oh, I'm sure we are. Even if it's subconsciously, it's what's in it for me. And so you need to be asking and thinking about what's in it for your client at that stage.
Precisely, exactly that. And so when you tailor your pitch, it should start, or your consideration of your design of that presentation, start quite broad and then get specific. So to that industry that you're pitching or presenting to that business, and then to that individual or a panel of individuals. It could be the same maybe within your 60 seconds if you're in Profit Club, for example. How you do your 60-second elevator pitch or give or take a few seconds could be different to that you do elsewhere. So try and tailor it, mix things up a little bit. And in terms of structure of the brief, sometimes we won't be told. We'll just say, can you present our proposal to us? Here's the date and here's the time. It's always good practice to remind ourselves to ask for what the brief is. There will be specific outputs, outcomes that your prospect or customer is going to be particularly interested in. So what they might not want to hear is 15 minutes of, oh, we've been in business for 35 years, we're worth this, these are the sectors we work in. They may already know that, and you're just wasting time. So it's good to try and ask for a brief of the outcomes that they really want to get out of our time together. And the question, forgive me, Steve, who was it? Was it Tim, Ian? Who was it that had the question earlier on?
Simon, how long should the perfect pitch be?
Oh, was it Simon? Forgive me, Simon. So in terms of timings, much like the phone or Zoom, whichever method, we ask the question. There'll be a facilitator. There'll be somebody who's helped to arrange that meeting. And timing is really, really critical. So again, is an example of where I've done it wrong before. is we were given half an hour to present our proposal, and it got to sort of 25 minutes in, we still had a slide left, and we barely scraped over the line in time, and then they just stopped the presentation. We just about finished, and they said, okay, thank you for your time, appreciate that. So getting your timings right is important. Ask them if they've got a preference. If they do not have a preference, then we should be proposing our preferred timing. Could you please free up 45 minutes, including Q&A, to go through our presentation? So get a clear brief and get a clear indication of timings. The reason timings are important is, of course, we can finish on time, obviously, but also it helps the prospect or customer plan their time. You may be one of 3 people that are due to go in and present. So stick to those timings, because you could be eating into somebody else's time, or actually run the risk of alienating the person you're talking to if they start clock watching. So yeah, be careful with your timings. In addition, and I'm kind of wording that, it's almost reading from the slide on these things, but because I want to provide context to these things rather than just chucking stuff up. So you'll get the date of the presentation, work backwards from that. Don't think, okay, I'll start work on that a week before. Really flesh out what could be like a mobilization plan or a milestone plan, and work out what stakeholders you need, or list out. So next week I'm going to look at the commercial propositioning. After that, I can then work on the operational delivery model, or what our win themes are and how they link back specifically to the person or to the team that we're presenting to. So start like the guys at Profit Club and with Action Coach, we always say, it's that start with the end in mind and work backwards. No different to that of a presentation. Ask for an attendee list or a delegate list. Huge benefits for doing that. Now, I put in there -LinkedIn. Once you know who the evaluation panel are, check them out on LinkedIn. There may be areas of overlapping experience that you can start to add into conversations to build rapport. So, Steve, I've enjoyed your company, but actually I know that you're heavily involved with Action Coach. You've done these other projects before. I've had a bit of experience to that. Whatever that angle might be, it's really, really useful to get research done on the people that are going to be part of the evaluation or part of that client presentation team.
Couldn't agree more. In various roles I've had in the past, it's really important to make sure that we know a little bit, that we can connect with those people around the room. The other, you talked about earlier on, Adam, sharing from our own experience and our own success and challenges in the past. And I think, being honest about my own pitching in the past, I have forgotten on occasions to make sure I've got the decision maker in the room. There's nothing worse than going to do a pitch on your business, on your proposition, and you're not pitching to the right person. You haven't got the decision maker in the room. And it may well be that you've got a partnership, 2 directors, you need both in the room to make sure that you can move that meeting forward. You may have a different view on that, Adam, but I certainly know from my own experience that I've been pitching and then realized it's not quite the right person to be pitching to.
That is exactly right. We need to know who's in the room. Yes, to see on LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff, but we need to know who our influencers, our champions are, who the people could test this, the offer that we're talking about, as well as the decision makers. And that's where you go one step further and you think about, so what's that person's, what's her role in the business? Okay, so she's the managing director. She's going to have certain things that matter to her. But then actually, if you've then got somebody else in that room who's from finance or operations or part of the sales team, they're going to have different expectations as to what they want to get out of that time. So asking for an attendee list, again, there's marginal improvements that just maybe set you apart from other people. And that's not dissimilar to if you are asking, if you're presenting in a B2C context, where it could be a husband and wife or a family or whatever else. Ask who's going to come along up to that Zoom call. Ask what matters to them. And then you can make that detailed and relevant, even more specific to them, over and above tailoring the brief and sticking to the structure of the brief, as I've mentioned earlier on. So an attendee list, particularly important. Another tip on that, actually, I'm going to talk about tips in a moment. But if you find yourself in a scenario where you're in a meeting or a boardroom or a Zoom call or whatever else, and your influence and decision makers are all there. I've got a real thing about not forgetting people's names. It's the thing that I carry. I hate to get people's names wrong. So I'll often draw the boardroom table out on my notepad while they're doing the introductions, and I'll put sort of names around the table, and I'll put arrows as to where they're sitting at the table, little things like that, just so I can remember who's who. So yeah, attendees.
A quick question from Joseph. Joseph just saying, is there an ideal number of people to take along to such a to a pitch?
It links on perfectly to the next point, which is how many that you can take on your presentation team. Again, you'll note that in this step, we're asking the customer or the prospect. We would like to bring the operations director and the finance director, whoever it is, because they're the relevant business unit decision makers within our business. They can make a decision there and then. But we should be asking the customer or prospect, how many can we bring? So that's a really, really good question. Arguably, or from experience, you probably get told 1 or 2 people, depending on social distancing, depending on the size of the boardroom. So we all just, a colleague and I will go in, but then of course the customer just fills out the rest of the room, as has happened before, where there's me and 1 other from the business, and then 7 of the customer in front. I mean, all of their heads, everybody else there, and it's like brilliant, which makes our life a lot harder. Not because there's so many of them, it's the fact that each of those people I need to make sure that our message lands with. So then we have to work a bit harder. So it's whatever.
Tying those 2 things together, Adam, in terms of the attendee list and also those who you might want to bring along with you. If you've got the head of finance attending from your prospects company, you want to make sure either you're briefed up yourself on your finances, or indeed you have somebody with a financial background that can answer the financial questions when they come up in the pitch. So I guess the 2 things are very closely tied.
They really are, and it then links into be mindful of who you take with you. Just because somebody's a subject matter expert doesn't mean they're pitch ready, and it's a really difficult call to make. And I say this tongue in cheek because it is quite derogatory, but where I've worked before, we've had that saying of don't bring the duffer. And that's not particularly an endearing term, but hopefully you get the idea of somebody who may be a subject matter expert, but their counterpart in the client is of a certain characteristic or whatever else, personality, that wouldn't quite get that person. And so maybe if you've got someone in your team that's just so black and white, boomf, so direct, but you've got quite an expressive or an amiable type of customer, they'll be like, what's that person's problem? Well, actually, there's no problem. So just be a little bit careful as to who you take with you, and make sure they're briefed and on the game plan as well.
And just for those people who maybe that it's your first time with us on this Lunch and Learn, Adam and I have done a number of sessions in the past on personality profiling. And if you have chance to try and unpick perhaps some of the personality profile of people you are going to pitch to, and then trying to marry those with the personality profile of the team you're taking with you. Again, it's something else just to consider. If you've got a high D on the other side of the table, you probably want to marry them up with a high D or a personality profile that's going to complement that. So you can, get the best out of the meeting. Absolutely.
Totally right. And then, of course, you can have a backup team. So there was a scenario where I was in something called a BAFO stage of a proposal, of a tender. BAFO means best and final offer. And I would have, even if you're not in a BAFO stage, but if you're prepared, if it's just you allowed to present, but your product knowledge maybe could be a bit sharper, or your commercial knowledge could be a bit sharper. Exactly right, Steve. We have people on standby where if we need to, we can pick up the phone if the customer's happy and comfortable with it, if it's the right opportunity, the right context, to put that person on loudspeaker, providing you let them know that you're likely to call. Equally quite important. And with the BAFO stage, as we were negotiating for this contract retention, we were then split off from the boardroom into a separate room where there was me, the finance director, and other people were then working out, can we do anything else on the price to get this deal over the line? As it was a really hot competition with our competitors. So it's having support people around you, even if that means someone sat in the car downstairs, or in reception, on the phone, back at home, or in the office, wherever it is, have a backup team with you. Other good practice printouts, maybe a little bit of admin there. What's behind you, again, touches on some of the housekeeping. But I suppose actually one of the biggest things really in terms of pre-game is to practice. The level of practice depends on your level of comfortability. No idea if that's a word, but depends on your level of comfort with what and whom you're presenting to. And I suppose really it comes down to when should we be practicing our presentations? And that could be scripts. Some people like scripts. Depending on the context, that could be good. Chuck it on an auto cue, do what you need to do. Everyone's different. Personally, me, I like bullet points, and I can work my way through those sorts of things. But when should we be practicing? I would sort of argue that you do it as far in advance as possible. But from my own experience, not on the morning of delivery. You might think of something else to put in that you'll then forget you put in when you're delivering. You may slip up on something, which could then lead to, oh, yeah, okay, I've just messed up on that this morning. I was fine before. And then you're carrying that little bit of a challenge or a struggle into your presentation. So be careful when you do your practice. Sometimes you have to do it an hour before in a coffee shop around the corner because of the other team that are with you. But we need to try and reduce that from happening. Again, kind of control the controllables, really. Steve, is there anything else you wanted to add to that before I move on?
Well, no, just on the practice element, I would, perhaps focus on objection handling questions. So think of some of the questions you might get asked in advance, and make sure you prepared your responses to those. The other thing I would suggest is if you have a contact in the industry or somebody you particularly not within your own organization, but with another organization that you can perhaps do that practice with, that will give you honest, constructive feedback. Great to do that.
That's a really good point. Didn't think of that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's good to get brutal, honest feedback, constructive feedback, as Steve said there, as opposed to anything else. Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, cool.
Do keep the questions coming, guys. If you've got any questions for Adam or myself, then do keep putting them in the Q&A box or the comments box on Facebook, and we'll pick them up for you. Far away, Adam.
That's all good. So openings and journeys, quite important. So the opening of a presentation, absolutely key to gauge or to maintain interest, spike that interest. And again, this is one point that perhaps could be a little bit patronizing for some, but just remember to breathe. We can get our emotions and our adrenaline through the roof, and we forget to just slow things down. Take a moment, breathe, and then launch into your opening. And there's a variety of different openings, but the kind of three that I'll just share with you now is you have the conventional types of opening where it's just, so I could say in this example, Steve, it's nice to see you. We're here today to talk about these are the objectives, this is the blah, 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 and you go through the presentation. The other style of presentation opening that I would normally tend to rely on is the alternative open, which is basically where you tell the person you're presenting to what they're going to get out of the time, all the outputs, all the conclusions before you've even started. And so by way of example, Steve, thank you for the invite and an opportunity. The reason we're here today is ultimately after our meeting, you will leave here with clear guidelines on what our proposal stands for in terms of milestone deliverables, what the budgets and costs are going to look like, and we would have dealt with any objections around mobilization. But in the meantime, good morning, my name is Adam. Let me talk you through our presentation. The alternative open, and using your name in that sequence, it's just a bit more conversational, a bit different. And depending on the personality of the people you're presenting to, they're then waiting for the hook. They're then waiting for those outcomes a little bit later on in your presentation. So you tell them at the start what they're going to get at the end, and you sell it first. And then the third, which I tend not to use too much, is the shock opening. I saw this within.
Adam.
Say again.
Is that the one where you go in fancy dress?
Imagine that. The idea of my shock opening would be no tie. That's how boring I am.
Yeah, it would. I would be shocked.
And so when we think about shock opening, I saw this in retail in particular. I'm also respectful of time, Steve. So just realised the time.
Yeah. We've got 10 minutes or so.
So I saw it in retail where a colleague of mine was presenting to a sort of quite a national chain, and he put a picture of a pretty much naked bloke on the front of his presentation slide. And so he willed in his projector and everything else, bang, function F5, and this massive naked guy. Some of the interesting bits were partially covered, but all the intents and purposes, naked bloke on a huge projector. And every person in the room was shocked. What is this guy doing? Well, actually, it was in relation to the cosmetics and bits and pieces that they were there to pitch and talk about, which made it relevant. But boy, they remembered him. I can remember it now. It was so, rather than just a standard company opening slide, to do that was somewhat different. So think about ways you can shock your audience into paying attention to you. But recommendation, try them all, but alternative tends to be a good way, a sort of good way to go. And rather than going through to the fifth slide, Steve, to respect for time, I'll probably finish when I've gone through the journey here, which is where we really make those presentations meaningful. Again, some of this stuff might seem obvious, but you'd be surprised when you're in the heat of a negotiation or a heat of a presentation. Sometimes we can forget the basics of eye contact, of gestures, mirroring the person that we're talking to, building those rapport. Are you going to ask for questions at the start of your presentation, or aren't you? These are often things that come up as well. If you say, ask us questions as we go along, well, then that's going to impede your timing. So let's make sure the customer's aware of the price of that. So I'm happy to invite questions, but that may impact our timings. Would you like to ask them, or would you like to save them to the end? If, as an alternative, you have somebody else on your presentation team, you can invite questions, and then the other person makes a note of those questions as you go through your presentation, which you can address in order at the end of the presentation. It's a judgment call, depending on the circumstances, but it's a good thing to head off right out the get-go. Third point.
Good. Joseph was just asking the very same question. Take questions during the presentation or afterwards. So, as you say, a judgment call, see how you feel it's going.
Yes, absolutely. Personally, again, it depends on context. I love getting the questions in. It's brilliant. So sometimes I'll break down those questions into themes that I'm talking about within the project. So if I'm talking about commercials and someone's asking me about operational delivery, well, I'm going to talk about that in the next section. So I'll cover that then, or I'll hold to the end. It's a judgment call, how you feel comfortable, but be prepared to explain that there's a price and a cost for that. And the customer needs to be prepared to give you an extra 10 minutes at the end. Track your timings like we've been doing in this presentation or in this webinar today. It's important we keep on top of those. It's professional. If you're part of a team, an internal team, or you're presenting something, if you overrun, you're eating then into your colleagues' time, which is never a good thing. Who's in the room? We've mentioned that in terms of responsibilities. What are their roles? Are they influencers, decision makers? Do you know about what KPIs that they're under, what their SLAs, what success is, what good looks like for those people? Make sure then that the point has landed. So you've said something and you think, okay, that person's got it, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm going to ask you a question. And a good thing to do with questioning is to always then question the answer. We haven't got time necessarily to sort of go into that, but make sure the points have landed. Don't get tunnel vision focus in terms of, I'm just going to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and you're just not hearing some of the objections, or you're not noticing some of those subtle buying signals and things that come up from time to time. Try to slow your roll where you can. Open up, listen, observe everything. And also, as I said, pitching is a conversation. It really is. PowerPoint and all of these things, they are tools. I do not want in the real world face-to-face people staring at my pretty slides as opposed to listening, watching me, picking up on my gestures and those sorts of things. And so paragraphs and paragraphs of text may make you feel comfortable because you've got something to read off or reference to, but it makes for a dull presentation. So mix things up a little bit. And remember, PowerPoint is a tool. It's not there to lead the presentation. And then the final point for hand over back to you, Steve, is then keep an eye on your pace, the pitch, the tone of what you're saying. Mix things up a little bit. Use silence. Silence is your friend. Silence is a good thing. Allows people a chance to regroup, and particularly in sales, we should all just take the moment to shut up, listen to what people are saying, as opposed to trying to be in pitch mode all the time. So keep an eye on how fast you're saying. There's certain words, accentuation, the certain words that you're saying, extenuate those. So if a customer or prospect says to you that, oh, price, that's a really important consideration, you mirror that. So price, okay, that's important to you. Accentuate certain keywords that resonate with the person that you're presenting to, but regulate your pitch, tone, pace, volume, all of those sorts of things. And the final point on volume is to also be considerate to what's going on around you. Are you in an open plan office where it's really loud and noisy? Are you in a coffee shop where it's loud and noisy? Whatever it is, just be a little bit mindful of that if you're presenting on Zoom, but also be mindful of that if a client says, we'll meet you at the Starbucks down the road. Is that really the right format? But again, I accept you'll have to take the lead from the prospect or customer on that. So those are the headlines in terms of things that we wanted to cover off, that I thought was important to cover off, Steve. There'll be other bits, I think, as part of the second session where I can talk about some of those top tips that people can use. I think we'll save that as an intriguing installment for the second session. But hopefully, guys, you've got enough out of this presentation to at least try some different things.
No, thank you so much, Adam. We've got a couple of comments really. I just want to add to what you said already on your screen in terms of, well, a comment from Sarah actually says, and I think it's a brilliant one, treat every pitch as if it's your job interview. And I have been in many interviews. I love that, Sarah. I love that comment. Brilliant.
Nice.
I've been in many interviews, both as a delegate, a candidate, and also the interviewer. And I think it's really important, if you're there presenting and pitching, to make sure you read the room, to listen to what's being said and read the body language, read the reactions of people that you're pitching to, and respond appropriately. If you say something and see everybody take a gasp and sit back, you may want to think about how you rephrase that comment, or whether you want to focus on that or move on to something else. And if people are attentive, if they're still engaged and asking you questions and listening, then that's your cue to keep on. But if people are starting to disengage, you might want to think about the focus of the conversation and change the topic. So a couple of thoughts from me. A great comment from Sarah there. Treat every pitch as if it's a job interview. That's your biggest pitch of all. We go to sell ourselves, when we go for an opportunity like that. A question from Jasphere. Adam, very quickly. Handouts. If you're taking handouts, do you give them at the beginning or give them out at the end? What's your thoughts on that?
Ask permission first. Sometimes if that person says no, if you happen to accidentally leave a handout on the boardroom table, it's not exactly the end of the world. I've done that before. But also check what's appropriate and what's acceptable. This is one of the tips we're going to talk about in the next one, but in a nutshell, yes, leave handouts, ask for permission, but don't go overboard. I delivered a catering presentation and they said we could bring some samples. Years ago, I used to sell catering services, but we had lots of head chefs in the business, and I mentioned I want to bring some samples. I don't want the whole works, just a couple of different types of food. They've bought a van load of food with them, and we just stacked out the boardroom in free food as terms of sample menus. Way too much. So you can go too far, but leaving samples or a handout, something like that, I think, absolutely good practice.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. And as you alluded to, we have got part 2. So we're both going to come back. I'm going to wear my Christmas tie, Adam. I expect you to be wearing yours as well. Not quite into the Christmas season, but 19th of November at 12 o'clock, that's a Thursday, we're welcoming Adam back to give part 2 of the perfect pitch. So hopefully, I'm sure you've enjoyed, and thank you to all those who've stayed with us this lunchtime. And if you have any questions, write them down, send them to us. Let's get Adam quizzed on the 19th of November for part 2 at 12 o'clock. Between now and then, this Thursday, we've got Claire Lawton from Acorn Support talking all about HR in a pandemic. And then next week, we're talking about systemization. How could robots run your business? So we've got some great lunch and learns to look forward to. In the meantime, Adam, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who've not met Adam before, Adam, do you just want to say what support you can give and what that next step might look like if somebody does want to engage and connect with you? I'm sure they'll be queuing on Zoom once we finish this, but just to share what you do.
We'll have a conversation. Why do you want sales training? Why do you think you need sales training? What outcomes are people going to be looking for? I then create a program that lasts 6 months. We have a Zoom call for between 2.5 to 3 hours, one-to-one. I'll share the whole program with you so you know what to expect, and also expect my guys to come back with demonstration of applied learning, what you've learned, how it's been working, where you've used it, and we do that once a month for 6 months through mentoring.
Brilliant. That's great to hear, Adam. So your contact details, I hope, are still correct on the screen if anyone wants to touch base with you. And if you've been listening to us this lunchtime and thinking, yeah, I'd like to talk to Adam about sales, but actually there's other parts of my business. I'm not quite sure about my finances, not quite sure about, my business plan going forwards, what I'm going to be doing over the next few months. Could I systemize my business? We would love to have a conversation with you. We've got a great program called our 30X program. That's 30 videos from our founder, Brad Shudders, where you can, for just £30 to sign up, to start on that program, to find out how you can get time to work on your business and not spend so much time working in your business, perhaps free up some time, get more out of your team, and ultimately, increase your bottom line, which is what we're all here to do, whether it's through having the perfect pitch or understanding, getting to grips with other parts of our business. But for now, it's 12:59, Adam. As always, bang on the money, bang on the time. It's great if you're giving a presentation or any pitch to make sure you finish on time. So on that note, thank you again, Adam, so much for joining us this lunchtime. For everybody who's listening, have a fantastic week. We look forward to seeing you again on Thursday with Claire. But for now, take care, stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you very, very soon. Adam, look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care, and thank you for your time this lunchtime.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.